Так, уважаемые коллеги и гости, добрый день.
Dear colleagues, dear guests, hello. Let me declare open the session of the Dissertation Board for the Defense of Thesis by Argylov Nikita Antonovich for the degree of Candidate of Political Sciences, Specialty 100110 Journalism on the subject of media policy of the Sakha Republic in the current conditions, the concept, areas of focus, and methods of implementation. According to the order 11807/1, issued on the 5th of December 2018, myself, Labush Nikolai Sergeyevich, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor of the Chair of International Journalism of St. Petersburg State University, was appointed Chairman of this Dissertation Board. Let me also introduce my fellow board members. Bykov Ilya Anatolovich, Doctor of Political Sciences, Chair of the Public Relations of Politics and Public Administration at Petersburg State University, Associate Professor. Achkasova Vera Alexeyevna, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor of the Chair of Public Relations of Politics and Public Administration of St. Petersburg State University. Shevchenko Alevtina Vladimirovna, Doctor of Political Sciences, Head of Chair of Public Administration and National Security, the Russian Presidential Academy of Public Administration. Strovsky Dmitry Leonidovich, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor, Researcher of Ariel University, Israel. First, let me emphasize that according to the Federal Law number 127 of the 3rd of August 1996 on science and the state scientific and technical policy, the St. Petersburg State University has the right to award academic degrees independently. The corresponding order on the procedure for awarding the academic degrees at the St. Petersburg State University, on the basis of which we are holding this session of the board, was issued on the 1st of September 2016. In accordance with this order, the session of the Dissertation Board is duly constituted if at least 2/3 of the approved members of the board are participating, but not less than 4 persons. Our Dissertation Board consists of 5 members. All of them are present, thus we have the necessary quorum. Let me set forth the procedure of today's session of the Dissertation Board with a total duration of no more than 2 hours. I suggest that we all stick to the time frames. First, we shall start with the Chairman's brief report on the main content of the documents submitted by the candidate and their compliance with the established requirements. Answers to the possible questions, 5 minutes. A brief presentation by the candidate for the degree outlining the key points of his study, 15 minutes. Questions to the candidate strictly related to his presentation, no more than 2 minutes for each question, and responses of the candidate. Speeches of the members of the Dissertation Board who will present their reviews, opinions, and suggestions to the candidate, no more than 10 minutes for each speaker. The Chairman's presentation of his review, the candidate's answers to the questions and remarks of the members of the Dissertation Board, no more than 15 minutes. Open discussion. The attendees may briefly outline their attitudes and/or specific questions and suggestions strictly on the topic of this study. No more than 5 minutes for each speaker. At that, all the speakers are kindly requested to put their names on the registration sheet and fully introduce themselves before speaking. To continue with the procedure, the next item is final answers of the candidate to the questions. No more than 5 minutes. Speech of the academic advisor, no more than 3 minutes. That will be followed by a 5-minute discussion before the open voting on awarding or not awarding the academic degree to the candidate. That shall be followed by the open individual voting. The chairman shall count the votes and results shall be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Decision on awarding or not awarding the St. Petersburg academic degree to the applicant, and the final word of the applicant, no more than 2 minutes. Before starting the official procedure, let me remind you to switch off your mobile phones, so not to be disturbed. So should not be disturbed. Let me also inform you that our meeting shall be recorded and broadcast online on St. Petersburg State University website. Their speeches shall be simultaneously translated from Russian into English. Let's start with point 1, the chairman's summary. The dissertation of Nikita Argylov for the degree of candidate of political sciences, specialty 100110, on the subject media policy of the Sakha Republic in the current conditions, the concept, areas of focus and methods of implementation was accepted for defense by the order 11592 issued on the 29th of November 2018 by the St. Petersburg State University Academic Secretary. The Dissertation Board was appointed by the order 11807/1 issued on the 5th of December 2018, and I have already introduced the members of the Dissertation Board to you. The candidate submitted the following documents to the St. Petersburg University Academic Secretary: an application to the rector of St. Petersburg State University, Professor Kropochev, to accept the dissertation for review and defense, submitted on the 23rd of April 2018. The second document was a review by the academic advisor, Melnik Galina Sergeyevna, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor of the Chair of Digital Media Communications of St. Petersburg State University. Third item was a list of 10 publications describing the main academic results of the thesis. 3 articles were published in peer-reviewed periodicals listed by the Russian Ministry of Education and Science. And 1 article was published in a periodical included in the International Database and Citation System, Web of Science and Scopus. Item 4 was a letter of confirmation issued to Argylov Nikita to verify that from the 27th of March 2017 till the 31st of May 2017, he was attached to the Amosov Northeastern Federal University and passed the candidate's exams in specialty journalism, and passed the following exams with the following grades: foreign language, satisfactory; history and philosophy of science, good. Next comes a letter of confirmation for study, or for a period of study, issued to Argylov Nikita Antonovich to verify that from 26th October 2017 till the 18th of May 20th of April 2018, he was attached to St. Petersburg University and passed the candidate exams in specialty 100110 journalism with the following grade: journalism, good. A diploma of higher education was also attached, and the dissertation in Russian and English as manuscript in the electronic form. The thesis has been formatted according to the requirements of the National State Standard, printed on a multiply with the indication of the output data. It should be noted that all the above listed documents comply with Article 12, Section 3, Thesis Presentation and Defense of the procedure for awarding the academic degrees at the St. Petersburg State University. And it's number 1 to the order. Here's the brief list of the documents. Now I'm giving the floor to the candidate. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the Dissertation Board, let me outline the key points of my dissertation media policy of the Sakha Republic in the current conditions. The importance of my research is explained by the following factors. First of all, at the time of globalization level, media information processes are gaining new quality and scale. Second, while the information policy in the region at present influences the media space and media industry in positive and negative ways. Thirdly, the regional administrations regions of the Russian Federation setting forth new tasks in the sphere of information, which require including regional local communities in the process of decision making, which is hardly possible without mass media, and reformatting the public administration, which is losing confidence of the population. Fourthly, reconstruction of media structure in all subjects. The Russian Federation is started under the influence of intense development of IT technology, telecommunications, internet communities, and transforming information in digitization. Personally, digitization of media space changes its outlook. So it calls for new specialists with the skills of producing, editing, distribution, which calls for new media, new spheres of media education. There's a pressing need to develop and implement the state media policy that will take into account the development of the information space, information sphere of the society in general. The purpose of my study was to identify trends in implementation of the modern state regional media policy in the Sakha Republic, Yakutia, and identify the ways of modification of the regional public administration and mass media to understand the approaches to understanding information policy and media policy, to describe the structure of media space of Yakutia and identify the main actors, subjects who influence the relations in the media space, to identify forms, methods, and areas of focus of communication services with journalists and mass media, to characterize principles and means of the implementation of the concept of regional media policy of the Sakha Republic, identify and describe modern models of functioning of mass media functioning, and analyze the modern form of interaction with specific features or concept media policy in Sakha Republic is area of focus and implementation. The practical significance of my research is in implementation of new approaches to regulation of the information space of a multinational region of Sakha Republic, which means getting the civil society more and independent mass media more involved. Points to be set forth for defense, and the conditions of globalization of media information processes, getting new quality and scale, influencing media space and media industry in the negative and the positive is very important to set forth a universal state policy. An impeding factor for development of media space is a high concentration of mass media with the regional administrations that does not take into account balance of business and political elite. The complex climate, low population density, vast territory, and the size of advertising market and remoteness are all impeding factors. General human resource condition is unsatisfactory. Employees are not getting decent wages, which means they seek employment in the other spheres, such as public relations. Abundance of diverse information in mass media does not touch upon really pressing issues. Public administrations are very focused on keeping control over the information flows, influence the media market, and include state-run media, use it as an instrument of influence. Implementation of the media education program will require industrial partner and involvement of the employers for training journalists having technological instruments and skills of working in multimedia SME. During my study, I've spoken to representatives of different information structures in my region. The survey allowed me to identify key areas of focus in the area of media industry development. I also was able to identify internal condition of journalists where they are working. I've spoken to 129 professionals between 2015 and 2016. Novelty of my study of a look at interpretation of the term media policy, demonstrated new approaches to transformation of regional mass media institutes in the contemporary information and political process. I described the regional media space of the Sakha Republic, identified trends of media development during transition for digital technology, and set forth the concept of media policy of Yakutia in new conditions. Should be mentioned that only the last studies conducted by a group of researchers from the Moscow State University, which took place in 2015 at our university, should be mentioned. Time frame of my study is between 2010 and 2017. It started in 2010, explained by several reasons. At that period, modern trends in media system of our region became more pronounced. Secondly, this period can be characterized by dramatic changes in the political and economic changes of traditional mass media and changes in the technology sphere, which affected new media. The next reason is the media prerequisites and structural changes of mass media market in Yakutia, and greater involvement of a state in development of media holdings, media business, and the periodicals market. The scientific and theoretical relevance, results, and conclusions can be used by the public administration bodies responsible for interaction with mass media for development of legal and other regulations, and for development of complex programs for structural modernization of mass media sphere in the regions. The results of my research enabled to identify key trends of media market developments in local and regional publications, which can be used to forecast development of existing bodies. Conclusions. The state still using mass media to promote its policy. At the same time, interaction between mass media and public administrations are sometimes destructive. Analysis of mass media in Yakutia demonstrating when media has to follow the rule games, they cannot touch upon certain subjects. The control from the public administration agencies and regulations impede creative potential of mass media, which results in low motivation, in lack of interaction with the civil society, the focus not on the needs of the citizens but on the needs of the government. The applicant, I would like to conclude that public administration agencies are quite satisfied with the current situation, retain control over the information flows. The latest trends in the national media sphere demonstrated that state institutions intend to keep influence over the mass media market. Analysis of mass media content demonstrated that information about the intentions of the government are very poorly described. In this big difference between declared and actual activities. Yet, studying interaction of public administration and mass media showed that efficient media policy can only be achieved if mass media and the government interact at various levels. My study of the key mass media in Yakutia demonstrated their potential to express active position of the public over socially relevant issues. Because of low quality of human resources, it's important to improve the media content. So this issue results from financial instability that cannot exist without this protection of the and support of the state, which enables the state to control mass media. A key role in the administration and political processes in the region played by mass media, which support implementation of important political decisions. Yet, involvement of citizens and various communities in decision-making in Yakutia is very low. The editorial policy should stimulate independent and competent opinions of the journalists. Mass media can become a forum for discussion of the political process. Creating the new media policy should happen with consideration of the following factors: the size of the media, technical penetration, availability of television channels, digital broadcasting, cable television, internet coverage, and number of mobile subscribers. Regardless complicated climate, geographical and economic situations, following the global trend, the government focuses on digitization of the region. The government has adopted a number of important regulations aimed at financing some significant projects in this sphere. A significant drawback is the absence of strategic plans for media sector development and content production. That's an important component of implementation of the media policy. That is why the media market is not described and outlined in many important documents. In general, we observe a tendency for the circulation is getting smaller, weak players are leaving the market, and prestige of journalists is going down. Confidence and trust to printed media is going down, which results in higher information apathy of the society. My analysis shows that a small sector of the market belongs to mass media published by major holdings which are partners of the state and broadcast interests of the state. On the other hand, private media in the hands of the journalist community getting financed by the opposition to stabilize private mass media. We need great presence of stakeholders. On the other hand, there's a need for creation of public media that will express interests of the society or of the majority of its member. Yet financing such media is not clear. The study of media space of Yakutia shows that the key vectors of quality media policy of the state is the search for optimal means and methods of regulation of the information sphere, creation of single media space, make a increase in transparency and efficient feedback mechanisms, protection of interests of the society, the individual and the state. That will foster further development of the regional mass media. Regional policy shall stimulate independent and competent opinion of the journalists. New business models should be established. Efficiency of the civil interaction is impossible without a clear policy and common language of interaction with to interact with the regional community. That will require greater involvement of the state. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Now let's move on to the next point on our agenda. If anyone has questions to the candidate related to his presentation, please. Ms. Ashkasova, the text of your dissertation shows that media policy is a symbiosis of the government and mass media. Is that really so? Is there any difficulties in this or tough points in this interaction? Breaking point by breaking points I mean conflicts or difficulties in interaction over key points. My answer is first we identified and tried to define or segregate mass media, information policy and media policy, and the interaction of the state and of administration bodies and mass media. So I think that's important, and that's very natural. It's a natural thing. We can demonstrate with this. The new government comes, the structure of the media market always changes. With the change of the government, it changes significantly. Changes mass media, which had good economic conditions. When the new government arrives, they have these changes. Another question. I have the following question. When I read your thesis and when I listened to your presentation, I noticed one thing that I think is very important, a very important matter. When we speak of media policy, we understand that within its frames, interests of various subjects of the media space should be taken into account. The government, the society, and journalists, of course. Don't you think that setting forth, asking this question is quite useless today, because then in 2015 President Medvedev said that we should degovernmentalize mass media. This was 10 years ago, and nothing happened. Before this issue is properly addressed, is it possible at all to ask a question of media policy, that media policy should take into account the interests of all the stakeholders? So if this trend survives, so what's the practical value of the idea of balanced media policy? I think this balance is necessary. This question is important because the state says that it needs minimum presence of the state and involvement from the state. So this struggle in the scientific community, for example, so this schools of journalism should be prepared for this struggle, and we know that of some positive examples in some regions where mass media quite successful in implementing this interaction. For example, in Yakutia, we have a well-known holding which created a model which was considered, which helped, and the state had to respect this model. Have another question? Wanted to ask something, one more thing. You mentioned many times the new era of technological change connected with new concepts, new technical aspects. I'm sincerely interested because there are different opinions. What do you personally think? Does that affect the nature of journalists' work? All these technical changes, do they affect the nature of journalism? No, they don't. Yet the journalism had to deal with many tasks, and in such conditions, journalism had to deal with content and technology issues, because this is new things. People always follow new trends. They seem to be more relevant, but content, of course, is always important. I have two questions. My first question relates to the technical, methodological part of your work. I was very impressed by the quality of chapter 1 of your thesis. My question is, could you clarify the relationship between media space and media sphere, information sphere? So what's the relation between these two concepts? You have any special characteristics? So, and let him explain, because I have also worked on this concept and I saw a different approach. I personally like the concept of space. Me personally, I used this term, was more willing to use this term, and I know that many researchers are using both terms, sphere and field and space, and well, they seem to be synonyms, but I personally prefer the term media space. By space I mean several factors, time, territory, the economics, etc. Okay, I accept your answer. My second question is, in chapter 2, you characterize the models of information policies developed in different regions, in Tatarstan, in Yugra. Have you analyzed, maybe, do you have any conclusions, how do the journalists feel their professional competencies affected these or that, or influenced these or that model? Because attitude to the government in different regions of Russia is different. In major cities, in the in the Caucasus, in other regions, is there have any conclusions on journalists serve the government or oppose the government? I have to admit that everything depends on the journalists. in a particular region without their involvement, this or that model at a particular territory. Let me give you an example. Somebody closes a private holding and stops publishing a newspaper, and in that case a model can change dramatically. For example, we have this Yakutsk Вечерний. Unfortunately, we don't have many such publications, and unfortunately this is an exception, and unfortunately we have very few such cases, such examples. And in that understanding, we in relation to this, we understand that journalism is a kind of a mission, advocating interests, and because of that, if a publication of a periodical survives for decades, that means that the liberal model is possible. Well, as you answer our questions, we get in more and more questions. My question is I've got a brief question. As a PR professional, well, item 4, you said that qualified professionals leaving this market. So how did you find this? And so you interviewed 129 professionals. Have you interviewed politicians or members of the public administration, decision makers of the Sakha Republic? So I think it's not enough to talk to journalists and PR specialists. So they are not the actual actors, they're not the actual decision makers. Thank you. Yes, we did talk to officials involved in mass media issues, departments of the head of the Republic. Speaking of professionals leaving this sphere, we found this while interviewing, and as a person involved in this process personally, it's very common practice when the market is small, and in this market talented journalists are always visible, and while talking, communicating with them and the government, and and of course it's very easy for holdings or for the government to hire skilled professionals because they're very visible. Does anyone have more questions? Then we can move to the next item on our agenda. I'm going to give the floor to Professor Bykov. I see reviews are you have submitted, dear colleagues, you've submitted very impressive reviews. Thank you. Dear colleagues, let me present my review to the dissertation of Nikita Argylov, The Media Policy of the Sakha Republic in Modern Conditions, Concepts, Areas of Focus, and Methods of Implementation. Following tradition, let me emphasize that while the regions of Russia are very diverse, and the media spaces in different regions are also very diverse, and the policies implemented by the regional government are also very different. that calls for research to identify trends and common trends. On the other hand, the development of the regional media spaces comes from digitization of the contemporary media space, played by the major internet companies, IT giants, global players. The thesis supplies some up-to-date information, facts. One of the key regions of the Russian Federation, from Yakutia. And this field has not been studied before. So the applicant introduced some new findings and new information. First of all, in the field of study innovation activities, media policy in the different regions of the Russian Federation, the author of the thesis, the structure of the thesis is quite traditional. It's based upon the classical principles. Starts with theoretical basis to practical issues such as the study of the regional media spaces and the information policy of the Yakutia government. In my opinion, the conclusions are well motivated. The author used sufficient statistics and sources to make his conclusions. The author used his own field studies, where he used interviews. The complex nature of his studies, number of legal documents and statistics explain high reliability of his conclusions and recommendations set forth in his dissertation. A high reliability of the results of his thesis is explained because they've been tested at scientific conferences and publications. Already mentioned by the chairman, the applicant submitted a list of several publications in magazines and 3 in peer-reviewed scientific periodicals from the list approved by the Ministry of Education, and 1 cited by international. This means that the dissertation of Nikita Argylov, novelty of the thesis, is explained by a comprehensive approach to media policy in relation to the regional media space of Sakha Republic, demonstration of approaches to theoretical understanding of transformation of regional media institution in the modern information and political process. The author is first person to review the new stage of media system development in 2010-2017, identifying the new trends of media development in the period of transition to digital technology. An important achievement of the author's solid theory based on modern political communication science, original empirical studies, and high practical relevance of the knowledge is summarized, which can and should be used for development, implementation, and assessment of regional media policy, not only in Yakutia but in other regions as well. Thus, my analysis shows the author submitted quality paper. At the same time, I would like to draw the applicant's attention to some issues. First, when analyzing regional media space of the Sakha Republic, physicists should pay more attention to dynamics over the period of study. Thus, for example, the author doesn't say how many internet users there are. Dynamics of actual coverage or rating of regional media. The author mentions circulation. Technical. This is technical, but this does not describe the actual coverage and actual popularity. And the author does not explain dynamics. It remains static. His data remains static. There are no diagrams of dynamics, of target audiences of various media. Well, the model of media space of Yakutia contains data about publications of local, but not about the actual subscription, which I think is really a major drawback. I think it may happen that a periodical has large circulation, but the actual number of readers is not that great. So that can give us a more detailed, a more realistic picture of the media space in the region. Secondly, well, the author uses the phrase overcoming disbalance or disproportion. But unfortunately, the author does not define proportions or balance clearly, which should be achieved in Yakutia. The author has to guess what the author means. I think this phrase is bad because, well, the impression of proportion or balance and disbalance can change over the time. Yet, this small minor drawbacks, all these comments do not affect the overall positive impression of the dissertation. These should be considered recommendations, and I think that the thesis by Nikita Argylov meets the main requirements, and while the applicant deserves to be awarded the degree of candidate of political sciences, specialty 10010, journalism. Thank you. Well, thank you, Dr. Bykov. Next, I'm giving the floor to Professor Vera Achkasova. Importance of this study is proved by a number of reasons. Influence of media space and media industry, information policy pursued by the government, digitization of the media space, which makes relations between subject and objects more complicated, and a new means of consumption. Consumers no longer can digest amount of information, which results in information apathy and an inability to interpret and analyze actual information. Interest can be explained because Yakutia, which is true, is one of the less studied regions of Russia. The author set himself as a task of understanding interpretation of the media policy phenomenon, demonstrates new approaches to the theoretical understanding of the reasons of transformation of regional media institutes. In the understanding of the applicant media policy, that's not only the effort of the government, but making of the information policy by the media themselves. Using the works of classical authors such as Lippmann, Laswell, and modern authors such as Castells and Webster, the applicant analyzes the concepts of information policy, covering a wide list of issues related to information relations to society. It should be noticed that the author, unlike a foreign approach where the information policy is not linked to the state policy, in Russian practice, the role of the state in forming the information policy is more and more prominent. So Russian researchers pay more attention to the concept of state information policy. In general, the foreign information practice, information policy is not affected by the state. The Russian Federation, in the Russian Federation, we can trace a clear tendency, which means state information policy. There was a state information policy. The author is defined as the ability of political subjects to influence motives and behavior of its citizens in the interest of the society and civil society. The applicant looks at a new stage of media system development, describe media space of Sakha Republic, identifies the main trends, says for the concept media policy of Yakutia. At the same time, the author says that the nature of information relations in the Russian society is different and unique in each region. Successfully creates and analyzes contemporary media models and creates his own model of regional information space in Yakutia. This theoretical model, the author complements with assessment criteria. Efficiency indicators are social, political, economic, spiritual, and educational criteria. The author suggests a detailed study of a regional media community, where he identified a number of disbalances the regional information space. For example, in Yakutia, there is one single document that would outline the key characteristics of the media sphere, goals and strategies such as early orientation and continuous learning. At the same time, the author concludes that regional government is highly involved in the information process. In conclusion, the author outlines several spheres for further study and research. The results of his study, in his study, he identifies the main trends of the local media market development, which can be used to forecast new changes in the media sphere in the Republic. In general, the results show that the work is a comprehensive and complete study. At the same time, I've got some comments. When explaining the information sphere, the author analyzes a large number of works, including the conservation of this state gathering, publications by Karpova, Nisnevich, Kalamin, and other authors. At the same time, he omitted the works of some key specialists, such as Political Communications, edited by Alexander Solovyov, which deals with the key concepts of the information space, and in which he explains the difference between the concepts that we have already described today. Second, in his thesis, the author looks at some new ideas and became popular lately. Page 23, the author says, informatiology, developed by Yuzvich and Popov. This sphere of research developed by at the chair of information policy of the Presidential Academy of Public Administration. In our opinion, we would the author should be more critical about such new terms which have not been properly explained. The scientific community has been debating such new concepts. As in communication sciences, we just started. So since this discussion is in progress right now, I think that this term has not been approved by the community in general, even though public PR specialists are in need of this concept or specialty, maybe. And item 3, table 1, pages 52-53, so low cognitive potential should be converted into SWOT analysis. That would include advantages and weaknesses. Yet my comments do not affect the general positive impression of the thesis and should be regarded as recommendations. The thesis by Nikita Argylov, Media Policy in Yakutia in Modern Conditions. The concept, areas of focus and means of implementation meets the key requirements set forth by the order, 1st of September 2016, on the order of awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and the applicant, Nikita Argylov, deserves being awarded the academic degree of Candidate of Political Sciences in Specialty 100110, Journalism. Article 11 of the order has not been violated. Thank you. Dr. Achkasova. Now I'm giving the floor to Dr. Shevchenko. It's very obvious that the thesis presented today is important, especially in this view in relation to regional policy. Research of the region is explained by a new liberal ideology and democracy as a real driving force of the so this trend, this political trend, and in reality we see many contradictions in this in its implementation, which affect the factors that influence transformation of the political system of the state, in its information communication system and mass media sector in particular. Government subjects of in this system have to find adequate strategies and tactics not to destroy components of the system, so which means developing policies adequate to dynamic conditions of the system and the state. Such trend has been identified by the applicant, which is set forth for dissent, says the situation. The current situation explained by the modern competition between public administration agencies and business community. Such situation contradicts the political call for great increase in democracy in the society, creative and involvement in decision making. So such reverse system, which has been mentioned by my colleague, nothing has changed over the years. And in the management science, this effect is described as the Hysteresis Loop, which is characterized made by the state and other structures that use mass media for implementation of the governance function. The author looks at this issue with with consideration of the national interests. The system used by the government. A comprehensive approach to analysis of mass media policy enables the author to identify the violations of the key principles of information sustainability of political system and the dynamic imbalance between authorities and media, which shows in dysfunction of mass media control and declining confidence and trust of the civil society. While this discourse reflects many approaches, models, methods, and practical cases of governance and regulations of relations of political mass media components, while the applicant analyzes the key components and identifies the regional aspect as the most important one in the structure of political communicative subsystem. The items put forth for defense demonstrate the author's attitude, which can be discussed. It's arguable, but calls attention of the using the interdisciplinary approach. The applicant explains his choice of object and the subject of his study, tasks and goals. But evaluating approaches, I'd like to draw the applicant's attention that he needs a better definition of the synthesis method, which is very important in case of a multidisciplinary study. And when you analyze our recommendations, so please explain. We speak of synergy or synthesis of mass media fields formed by different subjects of the information system result in a common or universal information field or media field. So what will be this field or basis for this synthesis? For example, in physics, physicists are using common field theory. In general, the dissertation by Mr. Argylov is interesting because it evaluates the relations between the regulating resources. I like the comprehensive and mostly a practical approach. So the applicant is taking no sides, is trying to stay impartial. While the statements of the made by the applicant characterize mass media and the role of mass media so that they cannot express the needs and the wishes of the population, which makes them unable to perform their key functions. In addition to that, I think it's very important that Mr. Argylov is a hierarchy of identity. So this concept also affects the models of media models in different regions. The author has conducted some serious research to identify the media policies, not only by the state. So we think that she explains novelty of his work. The scientific idea as possible realization of multivariant state policy is explained by Article 13 of the Constitution on the need of using many ideologies. Such many ideologies can result in many policies. So the practical touch gives a positive characteristic to the dissertation. The author outlines some practical recommendations can be used in setting for the media policy. Reliability of the results, practical and applicable, demonstrate their value for theory and practical journalism, political sciences, and public administration in the state, in the region in general. The results of the dissertation have certain heuristic potential, have good scientific potential. In the future, near future, can be used when planning for strategic planning. in the frame of national projects on national goals and strategic tasks of developing the Russian Federation until 2024. The strategy of the dissertation becomes really practical. So these are not just wishes, which is good wishes, but can become good bases which the state can take into account when setting forth the information strategy and development of the Russian Federation, which in near future, maybe this month, will be accepted, approved by the president. And that means all the subjects, the Russian Federation, all the subjects, all the regions will have to deal with the implementation. And in conclusion, I believe that the dissertation by Nikita Argylov, the media policy in Yakutia in modern conditions, concept, there is a focus and means that there is a complete and high quality work. The author deals with skillfully with the scientific task and has a good practical value. Municipal data security and national security. Maybe national security is not, the term national security is not used by the applicant. The thesis meets the key requirements set forth by the order on awarding the academic degrees in St. Petersburg State University, issued on 1st of September 2016, and the applicant Nikita Argylov deserves being awarded the academic degree of the candidate of political sciences, specialty 100110, journalism. Article 11 on the order has not been violated. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shevchenko. Now I'm giving the floor to Dr. Strovsky. Thank you, dear colleagues, members of the dissertation board, and dear guests. I'd like to share a few remarks on a paper presented by Nikita Argylov, and considering a great number of positive comments, and I would focus more on problematic issues of this dissertation, because the issues mentioned by Mr. Argylov very interesting for me personally as a journalist, as a researcher, as a person who have worked as a journalist, and someone who took up research after years of being a journalist. I believe that the information space today faces many challenges, and well, the issue of media policy is one of such challenges, considering that Russia today, unfortunately, is not the best, is not setting a very good example. If we understand, taking into account the interests of various actors or subjects of the civil society, and not only of the state, I mean, of course, the media and journalists themselves, and the very name, the very issue is calls for multidisciplinary research, because it touches upon different aspects of journalist sciences should be taken into account. Nikita Argylov seems to identifies very clearly information space, but then after that I ran into what I think is a serious problem. Maybe not so much of the applicant himself, though the applicant, of course, is responsible for what he has written, but generally for the situation in Russia. Indeed, the concept of media policy today and well, here Mr. Argylov was not the first person to mention it. It is related to technical or technological peculiarities of development, professional development, and of course, so that explains my earlier question. I sincerely believe that, and I saw that in Mr. Argylov's dissertation, he has omitted journalist, the role, the interest of the journalist himself has been omitted. Are the technological changes important? That's a serious issue, of course, but does the understanding change? Have the Muscovites changed inside? So are modern journalists thinkers? So these are the key issues which I think should really be dealt with, and I wish. So this subject is not less important; it's just as important. Developing a media policy runs into a number of serious issues. In modern life, I don't see a possibility for creating an efficient media policy where the state is getting more and more important. And well, so we may ask how the media community, how the journalists union, are they responsible for this or not? I think they should be, and I think these are important issues. I have not seen the applicant's opinion, because the very concept of media policy is very comprehensive, but I personally would like to see these, because I'm worried as someone who dedicated a great part of my life to journalists' consciousness. And I think that the whole list of questions deserves further research and further discussion, maybe in the future, such as relation between freedom, interaction with the readers. These issues, without this interaction, media policy is not possible, is useless. So how can the situation has become really dramatic? I see the state is absolutely unwilling to deal with these issues. They are comfortable, and I think that these issues should be mentioned by the applicant in a clearer way. I think these are. But of course, I'm not saying the dissertation is bad, but I'd like to use this opportunity to focus on the problematic issues. So see, I was not impartial. Some current questions, which maybe the applicant can explain in his speech today. We already mentioned that the media policy somehow connected with information policy. Then the applicant uses information field. Finally, on page 78, I found one more definition: the information and communication space of the region, and then I became really confused, like which definition I should use as the basic definition, and which definition does the applicant prefer. I think that the very concept of the information policy should be defined better. I very impressed by how careful he was looking at the complexity of these concepts. But as a reader, so what you personally, what's your attitude? What's your opinion? You've given a list, 20 different definitions of the information policy. So in the end, I personally got confused. After such definitions, I really wanted to hear the applicant's personal opinion. And one more, my next question, I would put, I think you tried to answer in the situation of being subordinate and distortion or poor balance of relationship. How can mass media implement their functions, serve their primary functions such as education, supplying information and other functions? Can they really serve their primary functions? I personally think that they cannot, or it's very challenging. I would try to define the framework of your time frame of your work better. Is not clear to me what happened in 2010 in Yakutia. Why did you start? Why have you started at that point? And one more issue. I had a feeling you mentioned an interesting survey, but I missed maybe or abstracts from interviews with journalists that would give your dissertation more value, because science is important, but applied science such as journalism is based on empirical experiences which we would all like to see. And in conclusion, I would like to say that all my remarks and all my comments, all my suggestions, my reflections, of course, do not affect the overall impression of your dissertation. It is very logical, it's well written, constituted, has a solid scientific base. The author is quite well versed and understands well the concepts. So I think that the dissertation by Nikita Argylov in this subject deserves to be accepted, and the author should be awarded the degree of Candidate of Political Sciences, Specialty 01001110. Article 11 of the order has not been violated, and my comments, I think, if you consider if it is possible, and if you turn them into some kind of a textbook or a manual. I don't know if that will be some kind of a monograph. I will be very thankful if you consider my comments and maybe include some of these points in your future work, or which I would love to see published. I think that's very important for Yakutia and for mass media in general. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Strovsky. Okay. We are all getting tired, of course, but I also have to make my contribution. And now let me read my review to the dissertation by Nikita Argylov. as the last speaker, I don't want to repeat what has already been said by my colleagues. All the strong points, novelty, importance of your dissertation, of your research. I would maybe pay small attention to some issues which I liked best, and maybe some questions which maybe agree with comments given earlier by my colleagues. When I review dissertations, I always try to guess or visualize what the author wanted to say. I heard the comments about information space, information environment in our colleagues. So we try to make the applicant answer our questions. And well, maybe that is a good thing. Well, the message of the dissertation is very good. It's important to develop a good media policy. The state should develop good policy, which is good. Now then the author says what obstacles or what challenges there are. And the author mentions the need to develop concept of regional media policy. The author says that there's no common document, and regardless the effort of the government, the authorities do not realize the importance of strategic planning. As I listened to today's question, I think the most important question here is how is media policy of Yakutia, how does it relate to the Russian media policy, national media policy? So Nikita tries to find answers. Says that the region needs a good concept. Says that well, his claim for candidate's thesis to set forth concept in a candidate's thesis. That claim is too high. Yes, he makes such a claim, but then the author says that the concept means a basic method to define, set forth a policy. So that's quite a big task, and I think the author suggests many interesting ideas which can be used in the future. And he can continue working on them. It's a good thing. What's good about it suggests that suggests his own methodology. Looks at information and communication space. Says they need to define formal and informal, find the ratio between formal and real regions. So he found a solution. He found a concept of territorial regional community. So this a community is created by communications. As a result, the regional community becomes a subject of the information policy and information competition. So these are let me say again that the thesis has many strong points, but the applicant should remember there are some weak points as well. For example, as mentioned by my colleagues, when setting the time frame for his work, says which explains about the technological spheres and the media prerequisites for structural changes in the mass media market in Yakutia, traditional media holdings and changes of the mass media market. So these criteria are not sufficient to set exactly these time limits. Well, maybe the author chose such time limit because that's when he started working on this. And you can use in some definitions such as media policy. This is political, legislative, which rules which regulate mass media activities in the society today. And at the moment, and later on page 43, the author says that media policy is a part of the state information policy pursued by the state. But later, media policy, in the theoretical part of his work, the author was maybe too influenced. In paragraph 1.3, he says that mass media is an instrument, an actor of political process. There are some technical drawbacks as well. I agree that these comments are not crucial, and they cannot affect the overall high impression. The author seems to be an independent researcher interested in his subject, and the results of the study show that the author says this is a good, complete, high-quality research on novelty. And I completely agree with the formal conclusion of the dissertation of Nikita Argylov on the subject, the media policy of Yakutia in the current conditions, concept, areas of focus and methods of implementation meets the key requirements on awarding the academic degrees in St. Petersburg State University, and the applicant deserves to be awarded the academic degree of candidate of political sciences, specialty 100110 journalism. Article 11 has been violated. This is my personal opinion. Okay, now giving the floor to the applicant, and let him answer our questions and comments. Thank you for your recommendations. I will start. We have like 7 minutes. Thank you for the comment about the number of internet users. I should have given these numbers in an annex. We have the data for the period from 2012 to 2016, according to the Ministry of Communication. The number of internet users grew from 69% to 81%. Speaking of a population of 18 years old, and the relationship is yet the existing balance can change dramatically. For example, in the north of Yakutia, we have there are 17 newspapers with clear circulation, and area of specialty, and editors losing independence. So this function of centralized governance is now this function shall be performed by Sakha Pechat in Yakutsk. So we don't know about this if this relationship will change. In chapter 3, I wanted to look at this disbalance and the negative outcomes which require close attention. Thank you, Vera Alexeyevna, for your comments and recommendations. Of course, I am familiar with Professor Solovyov's textbook published in 2004. It has sections dedicated to information communication fields. I carefully studied because this is a textbook. I paid more attention to sources mentioned by Solovyov personally. For example, monographs by Nisnevich and other authors. So it was a mistake not to include Dr. Solovyov's textbook in the list of sources. I would like to I agree with the opinion of Professor Ashkasa that the term informationology suggested by Yuzvich and Potapov was introduced several time ago, but was not widely accepted. In my works, I didn't use this term. In the third comment, I would like to agree with Professor Chkasova, speaking of threats and challenges of development of information space. Dear Dr. Shevchenko, Professor Shevchenko, I wanted to synthesize all the approaches but at the moment this is hardly possible because when describing approaches, the change of the management system needs new approaches. So, and such search for new approaches, that was my motivation. Methods, the opinion of Professor Shevchenko on the necessity to synthesize methods in the course of multidisciplinary study shall be taken into account. Thank you, Nikolai Sergeyevich. Speaking of chronology, I start the time frame starts in 2010. On 31st of May, Dmitry Medvedev sent into retirement when President of Yakutia, Vyacheslav Shtyrov, he was replaced with chairman of the government, Igor Borisov, who started restructuring the media system in the Republic. He launched a new television channel for Russian-speaking population and started increased expenditure for his for PR coverage. So this changed the media system. Now that the region has got a new head in September, we believe he has a new vision of the situation. So I agree that it will be interesting to compare with other periods, but in this, in my thesis, I did not set myself this task. I also agree that the formula to which I refer on page 26 by Markwell is not complete, as well as other formulas on page 46. Media policy means activities of the state in mass media, state information policy. So we use other formulas. Media policy is cultural frameworks regulating mass media in the society. Also, thank you, but wrong numbers. So we missed this point. I believe that the technology factor and its role in the media system, the technology factor, as we found today, is an important, the driving force of all the changes. Availability of the internet, digitization, and new platforms all affect media and journalism has to deal with many new tasks, getting new skills, work in new environment. And Dr. Strolsky and his understanding of journalism, of course, people have trust less printed media, and content is the most important. New concepts should be set forth. But let me give you an example. For example, which exists in Komsomolskaya Pravda. What's motivation of creativity? All conversations about citing, likes, and number of viewings affect efficiency and success of a journalism, and the quality of the text it becomes less important than the number of viewings. I totally agree that it's necessary to change the media sphere to affect the consciousness of journalists. Journalists, judging by the answers, are ready to change themselves if the conditions change. I don't quite agree that editors cannot not react to new challenges. Already on page 4, I set forth the key principles of media policies, which call for greater involvement of the civil sector and independent media in the political and social processes and possible distribution of the experience in other territories. We did not set ourselves the task to realize the position of journalists, which was to some degree expressed during our interviews. Well, we studied all the definitions of information policy and media policy. Not all are synonymous. And I have already explained the media policy on the, let me take your next comment. I don't want to say that media policy in the region is efficient. Yet it can be efficient if the tasks are set right, and if the concept of social initiative is implemented. The journalist functions become very pronounced, yet it's necessary to take into account specific features of our region. And speaking of your last comment, of course, I agree with the rules of the Russian language, and thank you. Well, dear colleagues, do we have any further questions? Let's, well, if anyone not participating in the Dissertation board more want to speak, we don't have any such participants. Now I'm giving the floor to the academic advisor, Melnik Galina Sergeyevna. Please criticize your student, your applicant. Dear colleagues, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for this intellectual feast, which I personally enjoyed. It was such a pleasure to see so many ideas. I actually wanted to take a pen and start taking notes. Nikita Argylov, and he graduated at Northeastern Amosov University. the degree in journalism and in economics and management. Made a major contribution in the media policy of the Northwestern Federal University, worked at developing the university connections. He worked as an editor, editor-in-chief, 2011-2016, head of the Department of Media. At the moment, Nikita Argylov is the head of media policy, public relations of his university. So for 5 years, he sent his magazines to the very good quality, which combined corporate values through the university traditions and new ideas. So supported these high opinions. His managerial skills are also important. I think that Mr. Argylov can be called the elite of Yakutia. He won several awards. Hope of Yakutia, won Hope of Yakutia medal. He learns and improves his managerial skills all the time, taking various trainings and seminars in Moscow and St. Petersburg. Professional work combines with research. He is a very versatile person, and also he decided he's interested in state information policy. So I think that's it coincides with his personal interests. He wants to develop any structure and any initiatives that can promote positive changes. I will not list all his public initiatives made of communications in education and research association, as a member of the National Association of Mass Media and a member of Public Council for Nature Protection of Yakutia. In addition to that, the director of non-for-profit Laboratory for Information Policy. So his ambition is not to make some theoretical conclusions, but also to promote, to make some changes, make the situation more transparent. And after the thesis was submitted in 2018, he took part in the elections committee. They published a good monograph, so that will be a practical contribution to the work. So I'm very proud of being acquainted with Nikita Argylov. Thank you, Professor Melnik. Dear colleagues, guests, now we proceed to the discussion. For this period, I'm kindly requesting to stop broadcasting our session, and I'm also asking all non-members of the Dissertation Board to leave the meeting room. Will take no more than 3 minutes.
Мы включились, да, коллеги, технически?
Dear colleagues, dear friends, let's resume our meeting. The most important part of our meeting has come, where we have to vote on awarding the academic degree. Let me remind you that the decision of the Dissertation Board shall be considered positive if more than a half, but not less than 3 members of the Dissertation Board participate in the meeting, vote for it in accordance with Article 23 of the procedure for awarding the academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. Dr. Bykov, your opinion? Considering the procedure, I vote for awarding the academic degree of a candidate of political sciences to Nikita Argylov. Thank you. Dr. Achkasova, I support awarding the academic degree to Nikita Argylov. Thank you. Dr. Shevchenko, I support, I vote for awarding the academic degree to Dr. Argylov. Dr. Strovsky, I also believe the applicant deserves the degree, his dissertation is interesting, and I'm also for this decision. Thus, dear colleagues and guests, out of 5 members of the board participating in the meeting, 5 members voted for. No one voted against and no one abstained. The decision on awarding the academic degree of the Doctor of Political Sciences, specialty 100110 to journalism to Argylov Nikita Antonovich has been passed. On behalf of the board members and all of the attendees, congratulate Dr. Argylov and wish him health. And you are an active young researcher. Continue, just keep going, and you will be successful. Wish you good health and happiness. Now I'm giving the floor to the applicant for his final word. I would like to thank all the members of the Dissertation Board, Dr. Bykov, Dr. Achkasova, Dr. Shevchenko, Dr. Strovsky, for your valuable recommendations for my further research. And of course to Dr. Melnik, who for many years, with whom we have worked for so many years, and I hope that today's thesis is only a beginning of our cooperation. Thank you. I declare the session closed. Thank you for your participation.